Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. If you're new to the channel, please make sure to subscribe now so you don't miss another video. Please make sure you leave a like on this video, as it helps the YouTube algorithm perform at a much higher level, thus reaching my channel out to a much larger audience. If you would like to have your story featured on an upcoming video, email me at thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. Sit back, relax, enjoy these true scary stories while I scare the hell out of you. I was a lifeguard at a lake when I was in high school. Our town was very small and the lake is where all of the fun was had in the spring and summer. The town was in Southern California and the weather was always sweltering during the summers. The lake was large and there was always multiple guards on duty to survey and carefully watch over the enormous body of water. This event occurred the summer after I graduated from high school. I started my shift at 11 a.m. that day, and the lake was calm. No ripples in the water, seemed very stagnant to be honest. No wind, the trees that surrounded us were eerily silent. No birds chirping either that day. I made my first walk up and down the beach. At this early hour in the day, the beach was already starting to fill up, and I mean quickly. Everyone was trying to claim their spots before the heat of the day hit. I noticed something very strange off in the distance. There was a man lying in blue jeans and a large winter jacket. He was close to where the woods began near a section of beach. Although the lake was very large in size, much of the area was surrounded by small clusters of tree line. The man seemed to be positioned near two young girls building a sand castle. I used my binoculars to get a better look at things. The man seemed to be edging closer and closer to them minute by minute. I used my walkie-talkie to check in with another guard that was fairly close by. My coworker was able to have our supervisor cover his section of the beach so he could assist me. My last glance through my binoculars proved utterly horrifying as my eyes focused on the man in the distance. He crept up and snatched one of the little girls. I immediately blew my whistle and yelled, "Stop that man! He's trying to kidnap a child." Multiple people looked at me in horror, and my partner and I were running as fast as humanly possible to save this young girl and make sure her sister wasn't taken next. When real-life situations of shock and awe happen, people think they will always be the badass that saves the day, but in reality things play out much differently. Time slowed as I ran and saw the man scampering deeper into the brush and forest. There was a curve in the dense vegetation on the trail, and in moments he would be out of my partner and my line of sight. My lungs were burning and I felt myself slowing. I was in excellent shape at the time, but my partner caught up to me and ended up passing me. Once we had both made it around the bend in the trail, we saw nothing. Zero, no sign of either of them. I then heard two men shouting and tires screeching. We made it to a small clearing in the pines and saw a small old beat-up truck speeding away. The girl had her hands pressed against the back of the window crying and wailing. The truck had no license plate, so all we could get was the make and model of the vehicle. The lake had zero reception, so we had to run back the way we came and towards the main parking lot to try and get reception to phone 911. Sadly, we had lost so much precious time waiting to get help. It took the police 20 minutes to reach the area once we got through over the phone. The girl was dismembered and her body parts were found years later, strewn about the forested area, 10 miles from where she was taken that day. Please never leave your child alone. The ultimate price was paid that day. My youth group and I took a trip to a lake house one Sunday, August 24th, 2014, after church on Lake Bruin, Louisiana. When we got to the lake, we all jumped in, as that summer day it was almost 103 degrees. We swam and swam as the adults were getting lunch ready. Thankfully, we were getting out of the water when the current passed through the water. Out of the 16 youth that were in the water minutes ago, 4 of us were still waiting to get out. I remember being in between the pontoons of a boat waiting on my turn to get out. Ahead of me were 3 other girls. I remember seeing a catfish float up and thinking that was not right. I could not react before I felt as though I was being restrained. I could not move and I could not speak. I just felt as though I was floating. I think I lost consciousness, because the next thing I remember was being on the dock looking at 2 of the girls that had been in the water. Neither of them had pulses and neither of them was breathing. One of the chaperones was a retired nurse and she began CPR. Our youth pastor followed suit with the other girl. I remember the ambulances coming and taking the girls. One was a 13-year-old girl who had been airlifted to Jackson, Mississippi. The other was about 17, and she was taken by ambulance to Rapids Parish Hospital near Alexandria. As for me and the last girl, we were both taken to the hospital to get checked out, and I spent a total of 23 hours on an IV because some level was high. As you can imagine, it was tough to see 2 of your friends lifeless on a dock. I was born in Mobile, Alabama, and I grew up around docks and water. I had never heard of anything like this before. As of right now, it was almost 2 a.m., and I can't sleep because the faces of the girls still haunt me. I'd really love to talk to someone and see if there's any way that I can help. Financially, I'm a broke college freshman who has moved from home and just wants to be able to do his part to help people. Please contact me if you can. This happened close to the beginning of June 2017. I was with my grandparents at the beach. We all heard some sirens. Sounded just like ambulance sirens. I put it off thinking it was just an ambulance on the road that was nearby. A little while passes. I see a boat with lights on the top driving. I just think it's a person driving their boat, and they have the lights on because it's kind of foggy. Then maybe 5 minutes later, I see a police officer talking to someone. I didn't really know why they were here. Then they came up to us and asked if we had seen a white woman with a light blonde hair in her mid-40s wearing a blue bikini. We say no, and then they explain that the woman and her friend had come to the beach that day. The woman's friend said she had dozed off for who knows how long, and when she woke up she couldn't find the woman. She said the last place she saw her was in the water. There was a riptide warning out for the area as well. This was 4 miles down the beach from where we were. I don't know what happened to her or if she's okay. I look over to our catch pool after a slide we have, which has a different lifeguard at it, and I spot a kid with his parent, both in good condition above the water. Is that him over there? I say, looking back at my friend. Where? Oh, he's over there, I say, pointing. As I say this, I notice that the kid's parent is talking to the lifeguard at the splash pad, and the kid is behind the parent, submerged, active victim. Since I saw this while talking, what I ended up casually saying was, "Oh, he's over there dying." My friend looks over and begins sprinting towards the kid. I hop out of the water and start walking over, maybe because I'm too calm or just been doing this too long to feel like it's an emergency yet. The parent hears splashing from my friend running towards him through the water, looks down at his kid and lifts him out of the water. The lifeguard he was talking to, 2 feet away from the drowning kid, didn't know what had happened until we told him. Stay sharp even when talking to people. Another interesting note is that the dad and kid were literally the only people in the splash pad area that day. I really hope that they would have seen him, even if I hadn't come out from the guard shack on my break. When I was 9, my father, mother, and I had moved into my grandmother's old house in the countryside. She had died sometime before, and my mother had inherited the house. While my parents, along with my uncle, were unpacking, I had wandered over to the empty pool that was at the very back of the yard. I remember reaching the broken fence before I heard my father. "Samantha, get away from there." I spun around and ran back to where my uncle resided on the back porch. "Why can't I explore near the pool? It's not like I'll fall in," I asked, looking up at my uncle before turning to look back at the far end of the yard. The light from the porch light only leaving a dim light against the broken fence. "There's a man in there," was all he said to me before ushering me back inside. What he told me that night scared the life out of me. I never went back to the far side of the yard again. I was only 9 at this time, but I could see the fear in his eyes. I never found out why he was so scared until many years later. My bedroom window overlooked the backyard, so every time I passed my window, I saw the dark pit that was a pool. One night I took a chance and looked out the window, looking at the pool and the broken fence. I squinted, being too dark to see anything, so I grabbed my torch and opened the window, shining it on the pool. I'll never forget what I saw that day. There was blood, starting at the broken fence, and a trail leading up to the shed that was just beside the porch. I screamed and dropped my torch, slamming the window shut and throwing myself on the bed. My parents came running in, Dad with a baseball bat and my mom holding a magazine of sorts, demanding what happened. "There's blood going to the fence from the pool," I cried, getting up and grabbing my father's arm and pulling him to the window, picking up my torch and shining it where I had been before. The same blood trail being lit up under the bright light of the torch. My father promised he would go investigate in the morning. When I woke up the next day, my father had told me that he went and looked at the blood trail, and judging from the size of the trail and where it led to, he told me it was probably an animal that had hurt itself on the broken fence, and reminded me what my uncle had told me, to not go near the fence on the far side of the yard. That was the first of many strange things happening in that yard. A week or so after the blood trail, I woke up to find that there was a bird impaled on a spike on top of the fence. My father wasn't home, but as I ventured outside to see where my mother was, I saw her pushing the dead animal off the spike before sweeping it into the empty pool with her broom. "Mom," I called out. Her head snapped around to look at me, her body language showing she was angered by being watched. "Samantha, get inside," she snapped at me. Knowing that if I didn't listen to her I would be in trouble, I ran back inside. She didn't follow until a good 20 minutes later, and I didn't dare ask what she was doing near the pool. Months passed by and I'd constantly see my mother, the same time every day while my father was at work, pushing a new dead animal into the empty pool. Some were foxes that got caught on the small holes of the broken fence, death by starvation. Others were more birds or even stray cats that had fallen victim to the broken fence. I grew used to seeing blood or deceased animals, so whenever I saw something caught in the fence, I told my mother and she just kissed my forehead, told me not to worry about it. One day my father came home from work early as he had forgotten his lunch to find my mother sweeping yet another deceased cat into the pool. From my room I heard my father shouting at her, asking why she was doing this and for how long. I never heard my mother reply, but instead, I heard my father come back inside with the slam of the back door. Then a few moments later, The sweeping continued. I'm 19 now. My parents got divorced quite a while ago for many reasons. My father had moved out to live in a town over, around an hour or so from my mother's house. I saw him quite often and I spoke to him every night on the phone. My mother's health had deteriorated over the years. She had rheumatoid arthritis, causing it hard for her to move around without help. You see, after my father left my mother and I, she stopped sweeping dead things into the pool, as her joints became weak as she refused to see a doctor or accept treatment. She would just sit on the back porch and stare off into the distance, only coming inside to make meals, and when it became dark. One night my uncle had taken my mother away for the weekend to see a doctor, and I was left all alone in the house. I was on Skype with my boyfriend who lived in the city when I heard a large creaking sound coming from my window. I excused myself and got up, opening the window and looking down at the yard, looking for the source of the noise. I grabbed my phone and turned the torchlight on. This is when I saw it. A silhouette of a large hand, curled around the bar of the fence, pulling itself up from what seemed to be the pool. I couldn't take my eyes off the thing. I watched as it stood on the outside of the pool and looked up at my window. Its eyes stood out the most. They shone in the light from my phone, like if you were to shine a light on a dog or cat's eyes. Its silhouette was human-like, but its limbs had been twisted out of shape. Its legs faced aside instead of forward, and its arms were limp by its side. I stared at its face. I wish I hadn't. His face was mangled and bloody like it had been attacked. Its mouth was set in a wide grin. I heard my boyfriend asking what was wrong, and as the creature started running towards the house, I remembered my uncle's words from a decade ago. There's a man in there. The end. Thank you guys for watching and listening to the very end of this video. I greatly appreciate all the comments that you guys send my way each upload. I need people to start sharing on social media. Share with your family, friends, anyone in the horror community. Let them know about Sinful's horror stories. And yet again, if you're not subscribed, I hope you want to at this point. Please enjoy all the content I have uploaded over the last 6 years. Until we meet again, stay sinful.